What's going on, YouTube? You got Bacon here bringing you another video. This time I've got the draft recap for VPL Season 3. For those of you who don't know, the VPL is the Villanova Pokemon League. It's a draft league format started by myself and a buddy of mine named Don. And I think he's actually doing some uploads on the Villanova Video Games channel, so that link will be in the description so you can check him out. I think he's doing a draft recap as well as weekly recaps for the season. But right now I've got just my draft recap here and what I picked, why I picked it, what maybe I shouldn't have picked. But just a quick overview of the league. It's a standard 5-tier format with Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3, Tier 4, Tier 5, and a Mega. And also you get 4 free slots, which are allotted certain numbers of points. The format of the teams will be on the right as I go through here, so you can see where my team's at as far as the structure it needs to fill out and how many points I have left remaining. Obviously, lower tier Megas normally being less valuable, so they give you some points back on the free end. So that's kind of something to keep in mind going through the draft here. But this time I was actually blessed with the 3rd pick in the draft, so this is the first time I've actually picked above 11th in any draft league that I've been in. So I knew I was going to be able to get one of those real like top tier hitters. I've already used Kyurem Black before pretty successfully in VPL Season 1, so I wanted to try out something a little bit different, but I do consider Kyurem Black to be one of the top 5 Pokemon in the format. Mega Diancie was freed for this season, so that's something I was definitely looking at. And then I was also looking at Celesteela, Tapu Koko, and Zygarde. So just kind of going into that, the first 2 picks I believe were Mega Diancie and Lando T. So I had actually my pick of Coco, Celesteela, or Zygarde at that point, and I ended up going with Tapu Koko. Now, something that's a little outside of my realm of normal playstyle is a more offensive build, which obviously Tapu Koko really appreciates. It's a great offensive pivot, probably the best in the metagame. Huge threat, of course, setting the electric terrain for itself with Electric Surge, which of course can kind of boost up that kind of meager special attack stat at base 95. But it's a good mixed attacker, or can run physical sets as well with that base 115 attack, of course. Gets access to things like Brave Bird, Wild Charge, decent coverage options, but overall its coverage isn't the best, I'll say. But it does have access to both U-turn and Volt Switch, which again kind of contribute to its being a really great offensive pivot, especially when coupled with that blistering base 130 speed. Obviously its bulk stats are nothing to write home about, but for something that's that fast and that can hit that hard, it's actually pretty decently bulked out, considering it's got that close to Clefable bulk, as my buddy Dave would like to say. He despises Clefable. But I didn't draft Clefable, I drafted Tapu Koko. So just kind of looking at things that I wanted to pair with the team. I already had some ideas in mind. I actually had a specific Mega in mind right from the get-go that I do end up drafting later on. But you'll see that as the picks come through here. Next up, we've got somehow sitting around in round 2 here, Zygarde 50% named Zygarde. Now Zygarde, because I got a little greedy with this pick. Obviously Zygarde is a huge threat, like I mentioned, one of the top 5 Pokemon in the format in my opinion. But obviously it's going to cost me 180 free points here out of my 400 just to grab this second tier 1 threat here. Zygarde obviously well known for its signature move Thousand Arrows, which hits ground types and levitators, so you really need a good grass or bug type switch in to help deal with Zygarde in my opinion, because you can't rely on things like flying types to just come in and eat that Thousand Arrows and then take neutral damage or even super effective damage if you're something like a Skarmory or a Celesteela on the following turn. Zygarde itself, really its attacking stats are nothing to write home about. Base 100 physical attack really isn't that great, but it does have access to great boosting options like Coil and Dragon Dance. You can run choice band sets. A lot of times you'll see people run Adamant Zygarde because it's bulky enough to take hits, and you get that. It really appreciates that extra damage boost, especially since if you're running a Dragon Dance set, you'll be boosting your speed anyways. But base 95 speed tier is actually not too bad for something that can kind of provide the variety of setup and breaking rolls that Zygarde is capable of. Just a really difficult Pokemon to switch into and to prep for, I think. So I was really happy to see it sitting around in round 2. So even though I ended up making the decision to go with Coco, I still managed to grab one of those other top picks I was mentioning earlier, later on in the draft. One more thing I just want to note about Zygarde is its bulk is absolutely incredible. A base 108 HP means that you can run subsets which don't have their subs broken by Seismic Toss. So that's something to keep in mind if I'm facing off against like Chanseys, and I don't think anybody actually drafted Chansey, but for example, like a Chansey. Base 121 physical defense is absolutely massive, and base 95 special defense is still very solid. Obviously, it's got that 4 times weakness to ice, which I need to worry about and kind of patch up with my draft here going forward. But even with the 4 times weakness, Zygarde can eat a lot of ice coverage moves. Like if you're just running HP Ice on your electric type to hit Zygarde, odds are you're not going to OHKO it. We've seen it a lot in the past. Like last year I faced a Zygarde and I clicked Timid Expert Belt HP Ice with my Thunderous Therian form. And Thunderous Therian form I believe has base 135 special attack. Something ridiculous. And it ate it. Didn't eat it. It took like 95% damage. But like considering it didn't die to a Pokemon with that kind of special attack stat plus a damage boosting item, it's just incredible bulk on Zygarde's end. It pretty much guarantees itself a Dragon Dance or a Coil, assuming it doesn't get like taunted or something like that. So really, really difficult Pokemon to prep for. I think people are definitely going to see that every time they go to prep for my team here. Next up here, we got Sauron the Necrozma. Now, Necrozma, again, was kind of a greedy pick on my end. It's something I wanted to use for a while, but I didn't really have a plan for it going in. I was just like, oh, Necrozma's there. I should probably grab it. Obviously, it's a tier 2 pick, so it's not like it's costing me any free points on this end. But Necrozma, again, another Pokemon with great natural bulk, base 97 HP, 101 in defense, and 89 in SPDF. That Prism Armor making sure it can take super effective hits a little bit better. So great natural bulk on this Pokemon. It does have access to Moonlight / Morning Sun for reliable recovery. It gets Stealth Rock for utility, Trick Room for utility, and of course it runs some very potent setup sets with things like Iron Defense, Calm Mind, and also Rock Polish / Autotomized sets, which you can run with Weakness Policy or Life Orb or Z Move or what have you. Now with the updated moveset in Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, Necrozma actually has access to things like Earth Power Knockoff, etc., Heat Wave, some good coverage options that it didn't actually have before. Heat Wave it actually might have had before, but I know Earth Power was one thing that at least it got coming over to the USUM from regular Sun Moon. So that Earth Power actually being really nice to help it break through steel types. Photon Geyser is obviously another huge addition that came in the Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon kind of remix, because now it can run viable Swords Dance or Calm Mind sets, because Photon Geyser uses your highest attacking stat in order to calculate damage. So if your special attack's higher, it'll be a special attack. If your physical attack's higher, it'll be a physical attack. So with its combination of coverage moves and setup options, it's a really difficult Pokemon to prep for. Obviously, it could be forced into more of a bulky role sometimes, but it really doesn't excel in doing that. And you'll see going forward that I'm not so happy with how the draft turned out, because I do kind of end up forcing Necrozma into that kind of role, which is one of many things that I think ended up kind of going wrong here if you've seen the title of the video. But obviously, just these first 3 picks, it's looking like a pretty threatening squad to start out with. So I was pretty happy with the first 3 that I got here. Circling back around here, we've got pick number 4, Frogchamp the Greninja. Greninja, of course, being only Torrent in this league, otherwise it would be busted in Tier 3 or even Tier 1, in my opinion. Obviously can't use Protean or Battle Bond, but even Torrent Greninja is still very, very effective in the format. Great speed tier in base 122 and decent physical and special attacking stats. Obviously can run damage boosting items like Life Orb or Expert Belt to take advantage of its massive array of coverage options: low kick, extra sensory, gunk shot, ice beam. Like, this thing gets pretty much every type of move you could want it to get, which is great for draft league format, because it can really tailor itself to my opponent's team if I'm running it more offensively or if I need specific coverage options to handle certain mons. It also offers me a Toxic Spike and Spike user, which of course my kind of more offensive looking build is going to appreciate. Tapu Koko initiating a lot of momentum with U-turn and Volt Switch, forcing things out. Zygarde, of course, forces a lot of switches into grass types, bug types, which might not otherwise appreciate something like a Toxic Spike. So just kind of a great support mon here, and also a good speed tier / special attacking, physical attacking, pretty much whatever you need it to be type Pokemon here in Greninja. So pretty glad to see that still floating around, and it's a Pokemon I've been wanting to use for a little while. I thought it fit the build pretty well going forward, so I'm really happy here with my first 4 picks, and kind of continuing that trend into my 5th pick. Really happy to grab Alolan Marowak as well, because it's another Pokemon I've wanted to use for a while, but usually goes a little on the earlier side of drafts. Obviously a huge physical attacking threat, and now I'm starting to kind of, you might have noticed I have a little bit of trouble breaking through grass types with things like Coco, Zygarde, Greninja. Greninja gets Ice Beam and Coco gets Brave Bird, but still, like, those Pokemon don't appreciate continuous switch-ins from grass and bug types. But if I can bait those things in with like Tapu Koko's U-turn or Greninja's U-turn, I can bring in a Alolan Marowak and just start breaking things. Obviously, that base 80 physical attack is pretty deceptive because Alone Marowak, of course, benefits from the Thick Club, which is basically a huge power boost, doubling its attack stat. So this thing hits incredibly hard. Obviously not very fast, but it does have viability with Trick Room to Kozma or something like that I could look at in the future. Really nice physical defense stat, actually, and two really good abilities in Lightning Rod and Rockhead. Can provide me an electric immunity, so if my opponent tries to take advantage of my electric terrain, I've got that option with Marowak there, and obviously Rockhead preventing it from taking recoil damage from things like Flare Blitz, or Flare Blitz specifically at least. A lot of weaknesses, of course, to cover up, but also offers a good number of resistances and immunities. So just a Pokemon that I'm really interested in using. It gives me another Stealth Rocker. Obviously, kind of want to fill it out with some more Stealth Rockers besides Necrozma and Alolan Marowak, because I think they perform other roles a little bit better. But if you just kind of look at my first 5 picks, it's a pretty threatening team right off the bat. Obviously very offensive, which is something I'm not used to using. I'm actually a pretty trash offensive player, so don't get too attached to any of the Pokemon on the team is all I'm saying, because some moves are definitely coming to kind of bulk out this draft a little bit going forward. Pick 6 here, I think this might have been a little bit of a reach, but we had one person who was drafting a solely Platinum Dex team, so I was a little worried he was going to snipe me, so I went out and grabbed Mega Abomasnow. Now, Mega Abomasnow obviously being a tier 3 Mega, so it is giving me back a few free points. You see now I have 260 free points remaining. Mega Abomasnow being a great wall breaker with base 132 attack and special attack. Obviously, its speed is nothing to write home about, but it's got great natural bulk too, in 90, 105, 105. Obviously, you never want to see that many weaknesses on a Pokemon, especially with that 4 times fighting fire weakness, but I think it pairs really nicely with Tapu Koko. If I can bring it in on a U-turn against a bulky grass or bulky ground type, like would typically want to switch into Coco, obviously Mega Abomasnow will hit something like that really hard with its dual stab. And I think it really offers a nice breaking potential for the team. Like I mentioned earlier, Tapu Koko is probably the best offensive pivot in the format, and I already have U-turn support as well with Greninja, so those things can really bait in Pokemon that are like grass types specifically. That Mega Abomasnow can take advantage of, set up Swords Dance, SD, just throw off raw blizzards. The thing hits incredibly hard, and it's a huge threat. Another thing that could pair potentially well with Trick Room, again, my Trick Room setter right now is Necrozma, which you would probably say is not the best Trick Room user, and I would agree with you. But I do have the option to do that going forward, and it's bulky enough that it can generally take a hit, unless it's something like a Fire Punch or a Flamethrower. So I gotta watch out for coverage moves, of course. But I already am kind of thinking in my mind of things that I have to watch out for coverage moves for with Zygarde anyways. So I don't think 4 times weaknesses are that bad in draft, as long as you don't tend to stack them or have like a lot of them, so that one good coverage mon can kind of annihilate your entire team. We saw that last season actually when I was playing against Finn a little bit. Finn, for those of you who don't know, came in second in the Villanova Pokemon League Season 2, and I was actually fortunate enough to be the champion last season. But against Finn's team, I had Thundurus Therian, and his team was really, really scary, actually. He had Zygarde himself, as well as Mega Scizor and a few other threats. But Mons with good coverage, like Thundurus, were able to kind of rip through his team. So things like that you, of course, have to watch out for, especially with all these 4 times weaknesses kind of floating around. But kind of the main problem with my team I see right now anyways is that it's ridiculously offensive, and that doesn't really suit my playstyle very well. But it's not really something, spoiler alert, it's not really something that I remedied very well as I went through the draft. So we'll see the rest of my team here, but really these 6 picks I was very happy with, and then the rest it was like, I don't know what I was thinking at the time, really. I just kind of picked things to pick things. This was a live draft, so I tend to prefer rolling drafts, just kind of like on Discord or something, where you have time to really think about your picks. Obviously, you're a little more pressured during a live draft, which is no excuse because I've drafted much better than this in the past. But just kind of keeping that in mind, I was kind of felt a little rushed on the back end, and I made some questionable decisions as a result of that. So hopefully I can remedy those with some free agent transactions or trades going forward. You do get 5 free agent transactions in this league and unlimited trades with coaches, as long as your team stays within the format of the league. So moving forward, we'll start to get into some of the weird stuff. The first thing was Kamala. Now, basically at this point, I'm realizing that I need some hazard removal and I need some kind of bulk somewhere. This Kamala was still sitting around. I think that defense stat is not correct. Not certain on that. Don't quote me on that, but pretty sure that defense stat is not correct. I think it's like base 65 defense or something. Not the bulkiest of Pokemon, obviously. It does offer some wish support. Also, of course, Rapid Spin, U-Turn. So an interesting utility mod. It can run things, really offensive sets like Banded Last Resort due to its ability Comatose. You can run Sleep Talk Last Resort and just click Sleep Talk and get Last Resort automatically. And if your opponent doesn't have any normal resist, that can hit incredibly hard because it does have a respectable base 115 attack stat. Obviously, it's kind of slow and its HP is nothing to write home about, so not a great wish passer either. So overall, not like too excited to have them on the team. It was just kind of something I felt like I had to pick to round out typing and utility, and I don't know. It's something that came on the team, and I won't lie to you, is something I've considered dropping a lot since the draft happened. If I'm being quite honest, I've considered dropping every Pokemon on my team since the draft happened, Tapu Koko and Zygarde included. But ultimately, I think I found out a kind of way to quote unquote fix the team without doing that specifically. But obviously, don't get attached to any of these Pokemon. But Kamala is definitely one on the kind of high on the will drop or probably will drop list. But yeah. Next up, we got Hitmonlee, Gostkowski, of course, named after the New England Patriots kicker. I am a huge Patriots fan, so I know that's going to irritate plenty of people. But Hitmonlee, giving me a fighting type, another rapid spinner. Not a great rapid spinner, if I'm being honest, but it is a rapid spinner, so it gives me that option if I need to run it. Unburden, obviously pairing pretty well with Tapu Koko, because I can run kind of discount Hawlucha and run the Electric Seed Unburden on Hitmonlee. Also kind of helps out its rather meager physical defense stat of 53. Obviously, it hits really hard with a base 120 attack stat. It can also run a really nice like Scarf Reckless high jump kick set. And it's actually a decent AV user if you're using it only to switch in on special hits, because it's got a very respectable base 110 special defense stat. And its base 87 speed tier is not bad, especially considering you can run Scarf sets or Unburden sets, like I mentioned, which can kind of boost its speed there and artificially boost its speed there using its item. And it gets pretty good coverage options and things like Knockoff, Poison Jab. I believe it gets Bullet and Mach Punch, if I'm not mistaken. So it's not... I think this Pokemon actually fit pretty well on the build of the team. I needed a fighting type anyways, and I think it pairs pretty well with Tapu Koko. So I was pretty happy to grab it here. Again, normally when I do new leagues, or a new season of a league, I try to draft stuff that I haven't used before, so I actually haven't used any of these Pokemon before in the draft league format. So I was really happy to be at least kind of trying to build out my horizons here and grab some new stuff to work with. So Hitmonlee, I think, fits the build that we're looking at pretty well. Again, still sitting on a very offensive team right now, and like I mentioned, didn't really do a great job of mitigating that. That's when we went forward. I was just kind of picking stuff at this point. But Hitmonlee, I think, is one of the things that can stick around for a little bit, and I can see how it does. Next up, we got LeBron the Cavalier. Now, this was a purely, man, I need a steel type panic move. So I saw Cavalier sitting there. I was like, man, all the steel types in tier 3 are gone, except for like one. I think Fortress was still there, but I hate Fortress. So I ended up grabbing Cavalier. It does fit well with a Trick Room kind of build. It's got great natural bulk in 105 defenses, 70 HP stats, not amazing, but it also hits really hard with that base 135 attack stat. Good Assault Vest user, Choice Band user, decent coverage options, things like Drill Run, obviously dual stab with Mega Horn and Iron Head. But I'm going to be straight up honest with you. I'm going to drop this Pokemon. Like, I don't know what I was thinking when I drafted it. Stacking the 4x Fire Weakness with Mega Abomasnow on something that slow, 2 Pokemon that slow, essentially, I think it just really was more of a panic move on my end. Obviously, it only has the one weakness in Fire, and it's got some great resistances because it's got the same typing as Scizor, but I think it just really doesn't fit on the team. It's a really questionable decision on my part, so I will be dropping this Pokemon and trying to pick up a better Steel type moving forward. Next up, we got Friend of Dave, the Muck. My buddy Dave has been beaten down by Muck in different leagues, whether it's regular Muck, Alolan Muck. He seemed to just have a problem with this glob of poison. But I think this was another kind of situation where I needed a poison type because I didn't have one. I want something to absorb toxic spikes to protect like my offensive mons actually don't really appreciate toxic spikes, but even my bulkier mons like Zygarde and Kozma don't appreciate them either. So I felt like I needed an absorber or something that so I wouldn't have to rely on rapid spinning or like defogging with Tapu Koko, for example. That's another kind of problem I end up having with the team is my hazard removal I'm not too happy about. Obviously Kamala and Hitmonlee offer rapid spinning options and Coco offers defog, but you really don't want to be running those moves on most of them for those purposes. But Buck is something that I've used in the tier 3 and below league before. It's been okay for me. but it's really not something I'm too attached to. So moving forward, it might be something if I can get an upgraded poison type that I investigate doing. But right now, it's on the team. Friend of Dave, sitting right here. Poison Touch is really its best ability. Sticky Hold if you're worried about not losing your item specifically, like you're running some kind of berry set or something. I think this version might still get recycle. Obviously, Alola Muck does it better because its third ability is Gluttony. One of its abilities is Gluttony. So regular Muck is just it's a Pokemon. It's a poison type. It's on the team. But again, if I can upgrade it to a better poison type, I certainly will be looking to do that moving forward. And coming in last here, we've got Minior, Death Star the Minior. Obviously, that shields down ability, making it very bulky, so I've listed here the stats for when it's in the shields up form, essentially. But when the shields go down, it swaps its attack and special attack stats, I believe, and also doubles its speed to base 120, so it becomes lightning fast. Obviously, a great Shell Smash user does get Stealth Rock if I want to run Stealth Rock on a Minior. But just kind of an interesting setup sweeper to stack on the team with Coco, Gren. I don't necessarily dislike this Pokemon being on my team. It's just not something I would normally see myself drafting, especially considering it came out of Tier 3. But it's another situation where I was sitting there in the draft, like, not even thinking and just saying, oh, well, I need these types, I need this type, and the types that I needed that were left were Rock and Flying. So it was either this or Aerodactyl, I believe, if I wanted a Rock and Flying type, right combination there. So I grabbed Minior. It's something I could definitely see being a huge threat. It can set up a Shell Smash, like I mentioned. It's got good options, both special and physical. So it's actually pretty difficult to not get swept by Minior in some cases if your team doesn't have the right resistances. Because Rock and Flying is actually not a bad combination of dual stab, and some of its lesser coverage options can actually help it kind of round that out. So actually kind of excited to use Minior here. A lot of people didn't really like it on the team. I'm not a huge fan of it on the team, but I think it does have a spot on the team, especially since some of the other stuff that I drafted I'm not as attached to and would be more willing to look elsewhere for. But obviously my big concern there is I've got 40 free points left over, so I drafted, this is probably the worst draft I've ever done, actually. And you sit there and you're like, oh, your first 6 picks were so good. And yes, they were excellent first 6 picks. But it ended up kind of costing me later on because I drafted Mons with typings or utilities that I could have gotten at much better value in the lower tiers, I think. So that kind of stuff really hindered my team building going forward. And then by the time I got around to filling out my lower tiers, it was really with some weird niche mons that I don't think fit the team as well. So of course, look for some changes to come here going forward. But that is the squad rolling out. I'm excited about at least half the team. So I think I can kind of fix this with some free agent transactions. I did something similar last season where I drafted a really offensive team, and I didn't like the way it built. I lost my first game of the season, and then I kind of made some changes around and managed to bring that team to a championship. Obviously, some hacks involved with the bringing it to a championship, but I think I played really well and prepped really well for the rest of the season following that point. So I think that's not to say I don't think I deserved the championship last season, but I think I want to kind of show why I earned it last season with a better showing this season than I kind of made it myself out to be in the draft here. So I'd really hope to make some moves going forward, fix up some holes on the team a little bit. Obviously, it needs a little bit more bulk to kind of fit my tastes. But that's the squad we're rolling into week 1 with, at least. And I'll certainly be looking forward to seeing what the team builds like. Really interested to use things like Tapu Koko and Zygarde, at least. Greninja, Marowak, and Kozma. They're all kind of really interesting Pokemon in my opinion. But we'll see how that goes moving forward. And thank you guys for watching. I'll see you guys next time. And I'm going to be bringing you some weekly battles here for the VPL coming up very shortly. Thank you very much.